Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at Campaign for America. It is 6:30 p.m. in the eastern coast of the United States of America. And with me tonight, we have our co-host, John McCann. Welcome, John.
Hello, Steve. How are you this evening?
Well, we certainly have a lot to talk about. First thing I'd like to do is to thank the public and continue to advise you all that we have a petition that has been circulating online calling for the removal of General Mark Milley from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We've got we're approaching 1,000 signatures. We're looking for 10,000. We just got that petition out, and more Americans are getting that petition. They're signing it. Now, folks, we're asking you to sign it because, and the reason why we launched this, John, this petition, got a lot of emails and calls. People are frustrated. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to react. They want Biden out of office. They want Harris out of office. And they want the military, the top brass of the Pentagon, to be held accountable. Now, short of anything else that we can possibly do on Election Day, we can begin to circulate a nationwide petition. And we've done that, and it has caught the attention, folks, of some particular people now in the political world and some military leaders. Because, John, from what I've heard, nowhere in American history, we may have broken history here. Civilians in this country have ever launched a protest like the way we have with a petition against the leadership of the military. And folks, we're making it clear we support our troops. The men and women on the ground are the heroes, not those politicians in Washington and not the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. John, General Milley, in my view, lied to the American people. He and Joe Biden lied, false narratives over and over and over again. And the phone call, John, the phone call. Isn't that enough proof for impeachment?
Well, in order to impeach, Steve, you have to have the votes. You know that. And for many of the people not too long ago on the former administration side of that fight, the argument was that we were just putting the country through a lot of pain because the Democrats were, because there was no support and there was no votes in the Senate. I think we're facing the same thing right now. And, we see people, that doesn't mean you don't call for accountability. Doesn't mean that what he did wasn't an impeachable offense. But I think we should take pause to recognize what the political reality is and not to be hypocritical in our approach. Some people could argue that, the Democrats would reap what they sow. But I'd like to think that we care about the American people more than about political retribution. And I think it's a pragmatic situation. The votes aren't there for impeachment, so you got to recognize that. But does that mean that Miley, Austin, and Blinken should don't resign? No. I mean, I believe they should resign. It's very interesting. Your campaign, the Campaign for America petition, antedated what happened over the last week and a half. That was well over about 6 weeks ago, if I recall. Well, now you have 3 top former military commanders, retired, calling for the exact thing that this petition is calling for. I don't know if you got to see General Blinken's comments today, Steve, or with regard to Milley, Austin, and Blinken, or Keith Kellogg's or former Rear Admiral Jackson's comments, where they're demanding that those 3 should just do the right thing and step down and take.
John, I understand that may now have included 20 more generals and admirals. I don't know if that's the same letter, but you're right. The top brass retired are beginning to respond. But to your point about this, I agree with you. They don't have the votes. But you know what? What they did to Donald Trump over a phone call that was innocent, I say go for the impeachment. You know what? Put them through the hell that they put America through. And I know you're absolutely right. We need to care for the American people. But the people are so aggravated and angry, John, and upset. I think this is a good way for them to at least see some movement. But let me ask you a question, John. I agree with you. The votes aren't there to impeach him. But we, the people, have a voice. And I've said this all along. We let too many other people that are way out with regard to conspiracy theories and nothing factual, etc. They've taken over the conversation. Now we have something factual. Now we have something real. Now we have something we could put our arms around through this petition and through a demand that either Milley resign or he be court-martialed. Now, my question to you is this, John. I mentioned the phone call. Would you explain to the people what phone call are we talking about? Some of them don't know exactly what was this phone call between Biden and the Afghan president. Can you be kind enough to explain that?
Sure. So back on July 23rd, a phone call had taken place between about a 15-minute phone call had taken place between President Biden and the president of Afghanistan. Excuse me, the same president of Afghanistan who's been accused of fleeing the country with hundreds of millions of dollars of American taxpayer money. But what's important in that call was a particular sentence that President Biden indicated was to him. He told the Afghan president, look, he said, regardless of what things are on the ground, the perception is things are going very poorly. And regardless of what the facts are, essentially, we need to put out there an alternative narrative. He was essentially imploring the Afghan president to lie to the public for him for whatever reason. We've seen only a portion of the transcript as of today, but they're going to release, I believe, the whole transcript this evening. So it's hard to put in context what the President Biden is meant by that. But clearly, when you're telling someone that we know the situation on the ground is far worse than what we're telling the public. I saw that Jen Psaki tried to spin this as President Biden trying to get the Afghan president to lead his people. Well, perhaps he should have a talk with his vice president, find out where she is, talk about leadership. But the content of that call is very disturbing, and we need to see the full context of it before we jump to conclusions. But if it is as it appears, the contents of that phone call shows you the disdain in that the president of the United States has for the truth. Okay, he basically took the position that we need a course correction here, regardless of what is really going on. And what we did learn was that in that call was the president of Afghanistan advised the president of the United States that the country was about to be overrun. And here's the critical point. At that date, July 23rd, the president of Afghanistan is telling President Biden, look, we are about to be overrun. He said that, very importantly, that the logistics was handled by Pakistan. Okay. He also said that we're about to be overrun by 10 to 15,000 terrorists. And it was a full-scale invasion. And that's when Biden responded, well, whatever is going on, the perception needs to be changed. And that's disturbing. I haven't seen anyone in any of the media outlets focus on the issue of Pakistan funding and providing logistical support for the invasion of Kabul. That's a very interesting thing. That I find very interesting.
John, you're right. Now, and that's something new. That's a whole new twist here. We knew the Chinese Communist Party was doing a lot of funding, but now we have Pakistan involved. Now, I've been on the air, multiple media outlets, news talk shows on TV, about 50 on radio, folks, within the past 72 hours, 50 radio stations. And John, I've been asked these questions. How much can you trust the White House and the military at these news conferences, et cetera? The answer is none, absolutely none. And I'm going to qualify, folks, what I just said, why you can't trust the White House, Joe Biden, or General Milley. To begin with, I've never in my lifetime believed I would ever be publicly criticizing the top brass of the United States military. I'm a retired lieutenant commander, served in the Navy for 25 years, love the military, will always support the troops. But it is the duty of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to make sure that the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, doesn't go down a road that will jeopardize the lives of the troops on the field and jeopardize our national security. That is what they did. Now, here's something that I said to the press that I can't wrap my arms around. You got General Milley, and you got Joe Biden telling us not to worry, folks. There'll be time to evacuate. The Taliban is 3, 4, maybe 5 months away. I cannot wrap my arms around that, folks. I worked with U.S. military intelligence. I worked at the FBI National Joint Terrorism Task Force. I know firsthand that the NSA, all our security agencies, and military intelligence are the best on this planet. There is no way they did not know that that invasion was days away. No way. And John, that confirms the point you just brought to the people, that even the Afghan president told our president, it's imminent, they're coming, they're invading my country. Also, folks, the Afghan president asked Biden for air support. He was turned down. So in my view, and this is why we have the petition out there, and the way you get it, folks, is either go to our website, fill out the contact form, we'll send you the link, or you got our Twitter account, our Facebook page, just scroll around there, you'll find the petition. So here's what happens. The president gets up and says, all is well. General Milley gets up and says, all is well. Nothing was well. Absolutely nothing was well. And John, what is outrageous, and it's boiling not only my blood, but I'm sure your blood and people across this country, for President Joe Biden, I'm not going to call the guy president, folks. Not at all. He doesn't deserve the title. Joe Biden gets up to the American people and the whole world and celebrates a success. He said, John, this was a success. John?
Senator Kennedy from Louisiana warned Joe Biden 2 days ago, you can't spin your way out of this. But we've seen today, for the first time, the Democratic machine putting their boots on the ground politically, so to speak, and you see them fanning out. You see various actors coming out and saying, well, this was a great thing that Biden did. Listen, the American people aren't stupid. You can't fool them. To go back to a point you made earlier about the top brass resigning and so forth. I mentioned this in a prior podcast. If you think back to General Schwarzkopf during the Iraq crisis initially, when the American public watched that general on television, you don't have to question his credibility. When you watch when you watch Schwarzkopf speak to the American people, he exuded confidence, and most viewers walked away from those conferences thinking America was in good hands. I'm not going to tell the American people or our audience what to think of our military leaders, but I'm going to ask this question: when you're watching Milley or when you're watching Austin, ask yourself, do these guys make you feel confident? The BS meter of the street of the average American people is very real. And these philosopher kings in Washington seem to think they could say anything and people will buy it. Well, right now, as you know, the president's poll numbers are tanking. Okay, better than 60 some odd % of the country is turning on him. I don't know how he's going to undo this. All the spin in the world. They're going to try to pivot to domestic policy. They're going to try to spend their way out of this politically. We'll see what happens. But what's happened? But this is the type of an event that it goes down in infamy, to use a famous term, an American famous term. And so I don't think they're going to be able to take the gum off the shoes with this quite as easily. Don't forget, Steve, and I'm sorry to go on, but don't forget all the families of the United States military, not just the current service members, but the veterans that served in Afghanistan and Iraq over the last 20 years. So there's a large slice of the American population that got a dose of political reality of what happens when you put someone in charge that all he cares about is politics. And that's what we're here for.
And folks, I was also asked by the press today, and John, what's next? What's happening next? Well, I'll share with you what I believe is happening next. By the way, John, we have people from Europe that just tuned in, and interesting enough, from the Mideast. And I know folks, those in the Mideast are very concerned about their safety. America is not to be depended on at this point. And I understand, folks, and John, that the British Parliament voted not to send any troops to assist the United States until Joe Biden's out of office. So this is a governing body of a great ally where Joe Biden says, no problem, we're all together. Well, we're not, folks. We are not all together. NATO is upset. And John, one other thing before I speak about what's next. Something that caught my eye was that while Joe Biden was telling the world all the NATO allies are with us, they support what we're doing, now they're saying, the NATO allies, that the United States left their troops stranded. Their troops were left stranded, folks, as our civilians and our own troops were left stranded. Now, could you imagine, John, with no notice, and NATO wasn't notified, this guy in the White House decided to just pack it in and leave. There are Americans left behind. Where's the success? Americans are left behind. Kids are being handed over to the Taliban. Women are being beaten and enslaved, and young men are being shot and killed. Door to door, knocking on doors, dragging people out, executing husbands in front of wives and kids. This is, John, and here's where my blood continues to boil. This is the thugs that the United States government and the Pentagon and the White House are now talking about trying to sit down, and maybe we could speak about bringing them some aid, the Taliban, to build some sort of government. You don't negotiate with killers and thugs and terrorists, John.
Well, that's the Biden administration of trying to buy their way out of the current hostage crisis that they just created. We have all these people that have been left behind, as you point out. And so what does the American government have left? Well, we have, over what they call the military term is over the horizon capabilities, which we know did not work with regard to the caliphate under the Obama administration. That didn't work, that approach. So Biden's administration has basically said, okay, if you're going to give it, we want our people back, but we're going to give you some money to grease that along. I mean, that's when you use the word aid, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cash and dollars and cents, and they're going to try to buy their way out of it. Hey, look, this is something that they created that did not have to happen. We are going to the reverberations of this is too much. It's just to even calculate. What about the effect on our military? I mean, the United States depends upon an all-volunteer army. I noticed there was a message here from one of our viewers saying that she's concerned about her son joining. Well, I have news for you. If while Biden is president and this group is in charge of the Pentagon, I would be hard pressed to tell my children it would be a good move to join the U.S. military right now, particularly with all the woke nonsense that they seem to be.
Well, John, you bring up a good point. By the way, welcome from Australia. Thanks for coming on board and watching our broadcast. And why are people from Australia and Europe and the Mideast, et cetera, tuning into our broadcast, folks? Well, I've got news for you. We're a no-spin broadcast. We tell it like it is, and I'm just so grateful that they're tuning in. But they know, and they're beginning to tell us that it's important to them where America goes and what we're doing. And we're the freedom fighters. Look, Australia was a great ally, for goodness sakes, in World War II. And how do you think the people there feel? So thank you for joining us. Now, here's the answer to the question, where do we go from here? And I said this on every broadcast, folks. What's going to happen is that the battlefield is changing from Afghanistan to where? America. Why did I say that, folks? Because they don't have to fight American troops anymore in Afghanistan. They're going to export their troops, folks. They're warriors, they're fighters. They're going to export them here, if they're not here already, to the United States of America. Joe Biden opened up, folks, he opened up our southern border with Mexico. They're just coming right in. Who are on those planes flying out of Kabul? You know who was at the checkpoints vetting these people? The Taliban. Think about that, folks. The Taliban, that was the first checkpoint. And then the second checkpoint was our Marines, so that they would make sure there were no weapons, bombs, et cetera, going on board those planes. Do you think a 20-year-old, 25-year-old Marine's looking at a piece of paper, ready to take fire from the enemy? He's concerned about what's on that paper. I wouldn't be. I get them people on that plane so long as they don't have any weapons on them. So where's the next battlefield? Here, folks. Here. We need to really, really be vigilant as a country. Now, John, you just brought up a point, and you brought up a point about, let's see, John, I just forgot. I lost my train of thought. All right. What did you just bring up? Oh, yeah. All right. John just brought up a good point, folks. This is what happens when your mind is racing or your mouth is racing and your mind isn't catching up. I'm as aggravated as anybody out there, folks, I'll tell you, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to share that with you. So now John talked about our military. And I've spoken to parents who are now concerned their kids have a dream to become a Marine, a soldier, a sailor, airman, Coast Guard, National Guard, whatever. And they're going to end up fighting a war. That happened to my son, by the way. I was in the Navy at the time he joined the Marine Reserves. They mobilized him and ended up fighting in Serbia and Kosovo, then Iraq. I mean, it was just the way it went. But here's what you need to be concerned about, folks. And the Democrats out there, or anyone who supported Joe Biden, blood is on your hands. Believe me, blood is on your hands. You voted for him. You elected him to office. And we still have unions and all kinds of people endorsing Democrats across this country. Who do you think's going to war, folks, when they do what? Here it comes, folks. Here's the bombshell. I'm about to let the shoe drop from the foot to the floor. Think about this. We're not going to have enough military manpower to fight a war against who? Against not the Taliban, not Al-Qaeda, not ISIS, but the Chinese. Think about this, folks. Think about what's going on. This is, you notice, John, Joe Biden, General Milley haven't said much about China. Their fingerprints are all over this. And what I'm concerned about is if China begins to think real hard that the state of affairs right now in our government may be an opening for them to go after Taiwan. So whose kid's going, folks? Hey, Democrats, when you elected this guy to office, when you put this guy in office, whatever went on, folks, he's in office. What do you think? Whose kids are going? This isn't going to be like Vietnam when just poor kids went. This is going to be far greater and worse than Vietnam. So the fact of the matter is, John brings up a good point. Right now, we have an all volunteer military. Who's going to volunteer for the military when you have no confidence in its leadership, no confidence in the commander in chief, no confidence in the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Those guys are a disgrace. Oh, somebody says to me, John, but Lieutenant, they served with distinction all these years, and don't that count? No, it don't count. It don't count. You serve with distinction to the end. You don't surrender. You don't give up. And I've said over and over again, we need George Patton's in office. So, John, I was asked by the press, well, what would you do? What do you do? You're a lieutenant commander, retired commander of our troops. What would you do? And I made it clear to them. I would tell them, one, you go in and you get special forces in to get all of our people out. Get them out of there. All right. We know where they are. You can't tell me we don't know where they are. In fact, the proof of the pudding is we know where they are. Joe Biden gave the Taliban the list of the Americans there. You get them out. And then you know what you do, folks? You invoke the Powell Doctrine. Remember General Powell, John? The Powell Doctrine. Lieutenant, what is the Powell Doctrine? Massive, overwhelming military strike. Obliterate them. Take them off the face of the earth. Let them know that when you deal with America, you're going to deal with our military power. Oh, but many, many people will be killed. They're killing them anyway, folks. We don't want to see civilians killed. We don't want to see good innocents killed. But the fact of the matter is that we've got to destroy the enemy. You can't bomb a half a bridge. You got to go after them and cut them off because, John, Somalia's next. Certain parts of the world are next, and then we're next. What do you think of that solution, John?
Well, if you're suggesting that if you enter into a war, you enter it and you want to win it, you have to. In order to win it, you have to overwhelm your opponent, and that's well known. But my concern is broader. You know, everyone's saying how dumb this is and how stupid what the president did. I don't know if it's stupidity. I'm a bit suspicious. You know, I come from my background in teaching in college, teaching at a major university in New York City. You know, I like to look at the chessboard and see what's the end game of that particular game. And I remember going to these conferences with these lefties. These lefties did not want to make American lives better. They didn't want to make citizens better. What they wanted to do was overthrow America. And I will remind you, the Weather Underground, the Black Panthers, these are all people that are now teaching at these universities. Bill Ayers, the founder of the Weather Underground, is a teacher at a university in Chicago. Okay, these people have no interest in reforming America or reforming policies to help people. those are just the tools of their political machinations in order to destroy this country. So if you wanted to destroy America, what would you do? Okay, you would destroy the morale of the military. Okay, you would bet on politicians early in their career. You would perhaps give the vice president of a country's son $1 billion to manage with no apparent expertise. Perhaps you would open up your southern border while you close your northern border. Okay, the Canadian border here in America is shut down tight. Okay, and why is that happening? So if you're looking to destroy a country from within, I would posit to you the recent history and the recent actions, not just with regard to Afghanistan, but other domestic policy here. I would suggest to you that this country is got big problems and is being brought on perhaps on purpose.
All right, let's talk about that, John. I was let's put it this way. I was on a broadcast this morning, and I was surprised the host brought that up. I didn't expect that. The host actually brought that topic up. So I want to talk about that a little because I'm beginning to see the feed too, and some people are thinking about that. The host said to me, Lieutenant, is it possible at all that this was done on purpose? That all of what we're seeing was done on purpose? And I was honest with the host. I said, look, I don't want to believe that. I just can't believe that the United States military, top brass, would do this purposely, leaving all that equipment behind, jeopardizing the lives of our soldiers. I just can't believe it. I don't want to believe it. But I got to tell you, John, I also went on to say, when you start putting some of these pieces together, like you just articulated, is it true that we had the intelligence and the president didn't listen to it? Then why hasn't General Milley come out and say that? Did they have the intelligence and knew and still decided to do this anyway? You had to know ahead of time. You were going to leave that equipment, right, John? You got to know ahead of time. You're giving the enemy an air force. So John, it goes to your point. I mean, there seems to be enough evidence, at least circumstantial, if you will, that it may have been done on purpose. I don't want to believe that. I don't believe it at this point because I don't have solid evidence. But boy, I tell you, this is what creates conspiracy theories. This is what creates false narratives. If it's false, I don't know if it's false.
I'm not suggesting it's even a theory. I'm raising it as a question. Whether or not it becomes a hypothesis, you're going to need more. But to your point, it just dawned on me. We opened up the show with regard to that the transcript being released between Biden and the president of Afghanistan. And in that conversation, in that transcript, we now know that one of the points of discussion, Biden said to the president, I know you're speaking to your intelligence services and our intelligence services, and as I am as well. So he in that call admitted that the president of Afghanistan had intelligence services of their own and was listening to American intelligence sources. And what did the president of Afghanistan say in that transcript? He said, we're about to be overrun. So if you're looking for direct evidence that they had advanced intel, there's some strong language in that transcript from our own president and the president of Afghanistan that suggests, of course, they knew what was happening. And then Biden was trying to get him to spin it and say, listen, you got to put a different face on and basically lie. And so, but it's not a conspiracy theory to raise questions on a chessboard. Politics is not linear, Steve, and you know that. You're a lieutenant commander. Politics is war without bullets. Okay, and a battle on one front doesn't mean that's where the war is going to be won. That's a strategic location. So when you take a look at the facts that we do know, okay, for example, Hunter Biden, said that he was going to become an artist, and he did, and he was doing some sort of blow paint. To this day, I've never seen that in my life. And you have unknown buyers coming in. That will be willing to pay. I think the asking price was $500,000 for some pieces of art because he's such a great artist. I mean, this has got to be the the most impressive Renaissance man America's ever produced. He gets $1.5 billion to manage from our communist enemies without any background, and he's getting $500,000 of painting without any prior experience in painting. This is what a Renaissance man the president's son is. I'll tell you, my hat's off to him. Good for him.
John, I received this 3 hours ago. This is one of the news flashes. Now, folks, when I read this, I had to read it 3 times to understand it because I couldn't believe what I was reading. Pentagon official said it is possible. John, I don't know if you have this. Listen to this. It is possible the United States will work with the Taliban against ISIS-K in Afghanistan. Folks, you don't work with terrorists. John, could you believe that? Now the Biden administration is talking about working with the very people that killed our troops, the very people that are slaughtering their own people in their country. How do you put out a statement like that? That, well, we're thinking of working with the Taliban to fight ISIS-K. Now, we know ISIS-K and the Taliban are enemies. But when it comes to the infidels, right, John? When it comes to America, guess what, folks? They come together to kill us, to destroy us. What, folks, I tweeted this out, and here's what the top line. The leadership in our country have lost their minds. John, the leadership in our country, in my view, they've lost their minds. That is the Pentagon top brass of the military and the everybody in the White House. They're out of their minds. So the question is, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Before I weigh in on that, John, it's a hard answer to the question because there's so much confusion. But where do you think we should go from here, John?
Well, before I answer that, if what you just said is accurate, and I'm sure it is, so going back to my prior point, this is probably the first bit of hard information that goes to the question that I raised, that everything that's been happening has been on purpose. Unless you intended to do this all along, okay, this if you intended to do this all along, everything they've done makes sense. Okay, the Taliban wanted relevance. We were fighting them for 20 years. I don't even agree with that characterization, but we had a presence for 20 years. And we were fighting them, but not engaged every single day for 20 years. It was an occupation force, particularly after Donald Trump pulled out most of the troops. But so I think you got the first bit of evidence, Steve, that suggests to me strongly that this has all been done on purpose, because you think this is an off-the-cuff decision. This is something that from July 23rd to now changed. I mean, I think maybe the president of Afghanistan may have fled because he felt Joe Biden would maybe selling him down the river. Who knows? Okay. But
God, Joe Biden sold us down the river. He sold America down the river. So you're right. Yeah. Why wouldn't the president of Afghanistan believe that he wouldn't be sold down the river?
Exactly. So the question is, well, where do we go from here? Well, I think that, and again, I support our republic and I support the democratic process. That is small d, okay, not capital D. And I believe it's at the ballot box, Steve. And and none of their agenda should go unchallenged. Whether it's the woke policies that they want to shove down the throats of American corporations, whether it's the critical race theory in our schools, and whether it's foreign policy, all that's solvable at the ballot box. And the American people, for a long time we've enjoyed good lives. Okay, we have cell phones, we have our cable television, we even have air conditioning. I didn't have air conditioning, Steve, when I was growing up. Okay, so we've had good lives. Now we have to listen to Lincoln. Listen to Lincoln. Okay, we need good citizens to step up. Otherwise, we're going to get the country we deserve. And if good people aren't willing to lay it on the line, run for school board, run for local council, run for Congress, run for the United States Senate, and doing it for the right reasons, if we don't have those types of citizens anymore, then we will lose the country, Steve. But where we go from here, in my opinion, in my view, the ballot box, recruit, get good people to run, break the system, break the cycle of corruption that we now have.
Folks, you hear what John McCain just said? We've been saying it all along. Ronald Reagan said it, as John said, Abraham Lincoln said it, Donald Trump has said it. All of us who are intimately involved in this whole mess, and believe me, we're very involved in this, The solution to the problem is, as John said, at the ballot box, from school board levels all the way up to the White House. We have to remove every single, in my view, Democrat or person who supports policies that are destroying this country. It's as simple as that. Now, for those of you who continuously say you're not going to go vote because the election's fixed, then you just stay home. Don't get in our way. We're putting an end to this. And we're going to go to the polls. We're going to vote, and we're going to get these people out. You can't let the past anchor you down and paralyze you of not going to the polls. This is what they want. So you do the best you could with what we have. And John, I have enough confidence that we're going to be able to overcome a lot of this if we go to vote when we're supposed to. Now, there are gubernatorial races coming up in 2021 in several states, state legislatures. You have an opportunity in your state, and I know we have it here in New Jersey, to send a strong message to the White House and to the Congress. Could you imagine, John, the domino effect across this country if every single Democrat running for office in state legislatures are removed, replaced? Could you imagine how those congressmen who are Democrats in Congress, what they'll do? They'll turn on Biden right away. They're turning on him now, but I mean, they will really turn on him. So we need to go out and vote, number one. Number two, folks, we have the petition out there. I'm getting some emails, John, that people are going to our website. They're filling out the contact form, and we're going to send them the link tonight to the petition. This petition is asking for the removal of General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, including a court-martial for what he has done. Now, why did we do this? We did it reluctantly, but we had to do it. People have been calling us, and I'm sure calling others. What do we need to do? How can we step up? How can we speak out? We're helpless without coming together. Right now, we got close to 1,000 people signed that signature. We're looking for 10,000. And folks, as soon as we reach 10,000, somebody big is going to take note of that, because I understand that through this particular petition process, you know what, a few thousand here and there, they're not going to take note of it. You start reaching levels of 10, 15, 20,000, well, they're going to take note of it. They need to know that the American people, John, have lost confidence in the military leadership. Lieutenant Colonel, I forget his name, Stewart, or the Lieutenant Colonel in the Marines, right? He was relieved of command for standing up for his troops, for speaking out. We need to relieve General Mark Milley of command, and we need to relieve Joe Biden of command. And we do it, and that's why I love our show, John. We do it within the framework of the law. We do it according to the document we support. We, the people, support the Constitution of the United States, the constitutional process. And that's what John just articulated. So, John, the petition is a loud voice of unity and then going to the polls, correct?
Correct. You got to go to the polls. You got to, not only do you got to go to the polls, you got to sit in your kitchen, have a discussion with your spouse and or your better half, whatever that may be, and boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, okay, and decide, enough's enough. What are you going to do about it? And that's the challenge I like to present to our audience every week. What are you going to do about it? It's not what we're talking about. It's what action are you willing to take? And I think that's the most critical thing. There was a little note here. One of the posters said, "America's asleep." America's waking up. It's woken up before. I remember the famous line after Pearl Harbor, where the Japanese general said, I'm afraid we just awoke a sleeping giant. And I think this is the type of the things that just happened over the last few days is a wake-up call for America. And remember, your petition was out there before this stuff went down, Steve, and I credit you, because you saw what was coming with what this Pentagon looks like under Milley's leadership. I mean, the guy goes on television. Just pull up on YouTube, on any platform you have. Go look at Schwarzkopf, and then put up a recent video of Milley, and ask yourself, who do you trust? What makes you feel good? Clearly, there's another agenda at foot here, in my opinion. And it's just an opinion, Steve. Nothing more, nothing less, and people can disagree. But action speaks louder than words, and I think our audience needs to engage, become not just voters, but become candidates for office as well.
Well said there, John. Well said. So, folks, I'm asking you, there's our website, campaignforamerica.com. Go to that. Just fill out the contact form, your name and email. That's all. By the way, when you go and do that, we'll put you on our distribution list and we send you intelligence reports every quarter, okay? But for the purpose of making it easy for you to get to this petition we have online, you could go to our website. We'll send you the link. Now, if you choose not to do that, scroll down on Facebook and on Twitter. You'll find that link there. In fact, we got a few links there. We're trying to get, John, believe it or not, we're trying to get Facebook to allow us to send it out far and wide. We're having some problems. I'm hoping we can overcome those problems, but that's okay. We still have the people of this country that are waking up. Well said there, John McCain. All right, that's it, folks. We'll see you again Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Next Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. here at Campaign for America. We'll also be on from time to time. I'm going to start a new, what would my wife call it? Oh, a quick 2-minute view with Lieutenant Rogers. What do you think of that, John? A quick 2-minute view. Maybe during the week I'll pop up in the afternoon at night and give you a 2-minute overhaul view of what's going on. And maybe John and I will do that together. We'll fit something in really within 2 minutes, just to keep you updated as much as we could. Well, that's it. Any last words, John?
Just God bless our troops right now, and prayers for all those that are suffering, not just in Afghanistan, that are suffering from oppression throughout the world. And a special shout out to our Aussie friends who are in lockdown, crazy law. I think the 6th or 7th day in lockdown in a zero COVID policy in that country. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, that's oppression. So prayers for them, Steve, as well.
Okay, folks. So John's right. There's tyrants all over the world. So, folks, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. And for those of you who have contacted us, we're overwhelmed with letters and emails. We'll get to you, okay? But make sure you have the right phone numbers. If you put phone numbers down, make sure you have the right emails. And what we prefer is email us specifics of an issue you're dealing with that you want help with. It helps us refer you in the right direction if we can't help you. That is very important. So thank you so much for joining us. Remember, we believe in the power of prayer. Please continue to pray for, as John said, our troops, our nation. There's still a God above. He ain't going nowhere. And let him keep the shadow of his wings over all of us as we move through this very, very challenging time. But as Reagan said, as Trump said, at the end of the day, folks, truly, we win and they lose. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.